The Empire of Ruin, how the British Crown laid the foundations of global tragedy. For centuries, the British Empire projected itself as the civilizing force of the world, a grand narrative woven through textbooks, parliamentary speeches, and royal pageantry. But behind the polished veneer of the empire on which the sun never sets, lies a darker, blood-soaked reality. The British Empire was, in many ways, the architect of modern chaos. From partitioned nations and ethnically fractured societies to generational poverty and manufactured conflict zones, the tragic inheritance of British colonialism continues to shape world events to this day. Partition and population cleansing. Nowhere is this legacy more pronounced than in the Indian subcontinent. In 1947, when Britain hastily departed the region after nearly 2 centuries of brutal exploitation, it drew artificial lines across maps in the form of the Radcliffe Line, slicing through Punjab and Bengal with a ruler and a deadline. This careless act of partition sparked one of the bloodiest population transfers in human history. Over 1 million people were killed, and more than 15 million were displaced in a wave of communal violence the British had done little to prevent and everything to ignite. The horrors did not end at the border. In the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir, which the British had nurtured under Dogra rule, over 200,000 Muslims were massacred in a systematic attempt at demographic engineering. This premeditated violence, ignored by London and covered up by Delhi, laid the groundwork for the enduring conflict over Kashmir, a region still scarred by war, occupation, and human rights abuses. Divide and rule, a colonial blueprint for hatred. From Ireland to Palestine, from Kenya to Malaysia, the British perfected the art of division as a tool of dominance. They weaponized ethnic, religious, and linguistic differences to undermine local unity and resistance. In doing so, they sowed seeds of long-term instability, civil wars, ethnic cleansing, and insurgencies that erupted decades after the Union Jack was lowered. In Africa, British colonialists arbitrarily drew borders that lumped together warring tribes or split coherent ethnic groups across multiple countries. In Nigeria, the favoring of northern Muslim elites over southern Christian and animist populations created tensions that continue to explode into violence. In Rwanda, the British-supported hierarchy between Tutsi and Hutu populations set the stage for the genocide that would follow. Economic pillaging and cultural erasure. The British Empire was built on theft, of land, of resources, and of human dignity. India's economy, once accounting for over 20% of global GDP before colonization, was systematically looted to fuel Britain's industrial revolution. India was left impoverished and famished. The Bengal famine of 1943 alone killed over 3 million people, victims not of natural disaster but of deliberate imperial policy, with Churchill himself ordering the diversion of grain away from starving Indians to feed British stockpiles. Cultural heritage was not spared either. Thousands of artifacts were stolen from colonies, now housed in British museums under the guise of World Heritage. Languages, spiritual practices, and indigenous knowledge systems were suppressed, labeled primitive or barbaric. No accountability, no apology. What makes the British Empire's crimes particularly galling is the enduring refusal of Britain's establishment to fully acknowledge, let alone atone for, its imperial violence. The monarchy continues to preside over post-imperial nostalgia, with royal visits to former colonies rarely accompanied by sincere apologies or reparations. The narrative remains one of reluctant retreat rather than violent imposition. The education system in the UK barely scratches the surface of colonial atrocities. Children are taught about the so-called glories of empire while the massacres, famines, slave trade, and systemic racism that built that empire are whitewashed or erased entirely. A call for historical reckoning. It is no coincidence that many of the world's longest-running conflicts, poorest nations, and most traumatized societies are former British colonies. The link between colonial domination and present-day suffering is not abstract, it is direct, documented, and damning. Until there is an honest reckoning with the empire's crimes, complete with reparative justice, institutional accountability, and educational reform, the legacy of the British Empire will continue to echo through wars, displacements, and shattered nations. Britain did not merely leave its colonies, it fractured them and walked away.